I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but here I am, sitting at my kitchen table at 2 a.m., staring at a cold cup of coffee and wondering if my marriage has been a slow-motion train wreck that I've only just noticed. Mara and I have been together for 8 years, married for 5. She's the kind of woman people describe as mysterious, but I always took that as part of her charm. She spoke softly, carried herself with this effortless grace, and had a way of making people feel like she was letting them in on a secret. I used to feel lucky to be the one she really opened up to, or at least I thought she did. Over the last few months, something changed. She'd stay up late in the study, claiming she was working on personal projects or reading. She started locking the door, a first for her, and got irritated when I'd knock. Her phone was suddenly glued to her, screen always facing down. When I asked what was going on, she'd give me this dismissive little laugh and say, "Elliot, you're being paranoid. I'm allowed to have a life outside of you." At first, I told myself it was nothing. I even blamed myself, thinking maybe I was just stressed from work and imagining things. But there was something in the way she moved lately, lighter, almost excited, like she was carrying a secret she couldn't wait to revisit. I just didn't realize that secret would break me. The changes didn't happen overnight, they crept in slowly, the way mold does in the corner of a room you never look at closely enough. Mara started dressing differently. Not drastically, but intentionally. Silk blouses for quick grocery runs, perfume at 10 p.m., just to feel nice, and lipstick so perfectly applied it looked like she'd had a professional touch-up. I joked about it once, asking if she had a secret fashion blog I didn't know about, and she rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. "God, Elliot, not everything is about you," she snapped. Our conversations got shorter. I'd tell her about my day, and she'd nod absently, scrolling through her phone. But when I'd ask about hers, she'd offer vague, empty sentences. "It was fine. Just errands. You wouldn't care." At night, I started hearing her voice through the walls, soft, almost tender whispers. The first few times, I thought she was on the phone with her sister. But then I noticed the tone. It wasn't the casual warmth she used with family. It was lower, intimate, with pauses that seemed loaded with meaning. And she always made sure I couldn't see what she was doing in the study. I told myself I was being ridiculous, until the night I decided to follow the sound of her voice. It was a Tuesday, nothing special about it except for the way the air in the house felt heavier, like it was holding its breath. Around midnight, I heard her again. That same low, careful tone, almost like she was coaxing someone to come closer. I padded down the hall, stopping outside the study door. The light was on, but the shadows under the door were still. She wasn't pacing, wasn't typing. Just, sitting. I pressed my ear against the wood, my pulse thudding in my neck. And then I realized, it wasn't a phone she was holding. The cadence was wrong. No clicking, no muffled voice on the other end. Just her, talking into the silence. Soon, she breathed, her voice barely more than a tremor. "We'll finish what we started. He has no idea." I felt my stomach twist. I had no idea who she was talking to, or what the hell they'd started. My hand was on the doorknob before I even knew what I was doing, but I stopped. Something in me didn't want to see it yet. When her chair scraped back and the whispering stopped, I bolted to the kitchen and pretended to be making tea. She passed by me, smiling like nothing happened, but her eyes looked like they were somewhere else entirely. That was the moment I knew, I wasn't imagining anything. Something was rotting in my marriage, and it wasn't just in my head. The next night, Mara said she was heading out for a late grocery run. No list, no reusable bags, just her purse and a quick kiss on my cheek that felt fake. As soon as I heard her car pull away, I went straight to the study. Her desk was neat, too neat, like it had been staged. But on the far corner, half hidden under a stack of unopened mail, I found it, a small silver locket. It was warm when I picked it up, like it had just been in her hands. I flipped it open, expecting maybe a picture of us, or her parents. Instead, there was a man's portrait, mid-30s, strong jaw, the kind of smirk that made you instantly hate him. He looked alive in a way I hadn't seen Mara look in months. Something felt off, so I pried at the back of the locket. A thin slip of paper slid out, folded so tight it was barely bigger than a thumbnail. My hands shook as I unfolded it. "We will finish what we started. He knows nothing." The room felt smaller. The words burned into me like acid. My first thought was, who is this man? My second was, what the hell have they started? When Mara came home, she tossed a single bag of groceries on the counter, milk, bread, and absolutely nothing that required a late-night trip. She smiled too wide and asked, "Did you hear something while I was gone?" I swallowed hard and said no. But in that moment, I realized I wasn't just suspicious anymore. I was terrified of the truth. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying her whisper, the man's face, the letter's words. By morning, my chest felt like it was full of wet cement. Over breakfast, I decided I couldn't keep pretending. "Who's the guy in the locket?" I asked, my voice steady but my hands trembling under the table. Her spoon froze halfway to her mouth. For a split second, I saw panic in her eyes, but it was gone so fast I might have imagined it. Then came the smirk. "Oh my God, Elliot. You went through my stuff. Seriously? That's pathetic." I didn't back down. "Answer the question." She set the spoon down slowly, like she was the one being wronged. "It's no one. Just an old friend. Someone from before you. You're really going to freak out over a piece of jewelry? That's insecure, even for you." "Insecure?" I repeated, heat rising in my throat. "You're whispering into it like it's a damn phone and hiding letters inside. That's not nothing." She rolled her eyes and let out a short, bitter laugh. "You have an overactive imagination, Elliot. Maybe try trusting your wife instead of playing detective." She stood up, grabbed her coffee, and walked out of the kitchen like she'd just won some unspoken argument. But her reaction didn't calm me, it only cemented the truth I didn't want to admit. She was lying, and she wasn't even afraid I'd catch her. After that breakfast, something in the air between us shifted, like we were both pretending to play house but the walls were paper thin. She wasn't even trying to hide her contempt anymore. She started spending more nights working late or meeting friends. When I asked who these friends were, she'd give me vague names I'd never heard before. Once, I suggested we meet them together, and she laughed in my face. "God, Elliot, you'd bore them to death." Her phone became an extension of her hand. She'd tilt the screen away the second I walked into the room, sometimes even leaving the house to take calls. A couple of times I caught her coming back inside with that same lightness in her step, like she'd been fed something emotional that I clearly couldn't give her anymore. I tried to act normal, to gather more pieces before accusing her again. But the small signs kept stacking, a faint cologne that wasn't mine on her scarf, unexplained charges on our bank statement labeled under random store names, a second perfume I'd never smelled before. And then came the night I saw her car parked 2 streets over when she told me she was at the store. That's when I decided I wasn't just going to watch from the sidelines anymore, I was going to follow her. It was a Thursday night, the kind where the rain makes everything glisten like a bad noir movie. Mara grabbed her purse, said she was running to the pharmacy for just a couple things, and was gone before I could ask which pharmacy. I waited 2 minutes, then slipped on my jacket and got in my car. I kept a few cars behind her, headlights off when I could. She didn't head toward the store or pharmacy, she drove across town, weaving through side streets like she knew she didn't want to be followed. Finally, she pulled up to an old brick building I recognized, a boutique hotel. The kind of place people use for affairs or illicit meetings. I parked around the corner, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight they ached. She stepped out of the car, umbrella up, and walked briskly toward the entrance. A man in a dark coat was already waiting under the awning. Even from a distance, I could see the way her whole body changed when she saw him, shoulders back, head tilted, that soft smile she hadn't given me in months. He leaned in close, said something I couldn't hear, and she laughed, touching his chest like it was the most natural thing in the world. Then they went inside together. I sat there for an hour, rain streaking the windshield, fighting the urge to storm in. When she finally came back out alone, she looked satisfied. She drove home like nothing happened. And I followed, knowing this time I had more than just suspicions. I had proof. When she walked through the front door, shaking off her umbrella, I was already sitting at the kitchen table. The locket lay in front of me, the letter unfolded beside it. I wanted her to see it the second she looked my way. "Fun night at the pharmacy?" I asked. She froze for half a heartbeat, then gave me this exaggerated sigh, like I was a child throwing a tantrum. "Oh, here we go again. What is it this time, Elliot? Did I take too long buying shampoo?" "Don't play dumb," I said, my voice low but shaking. "I saw you. The hotel. The guy." Her eyes narrowed, but instead of looking guilty, she looked irritated. "You followed me? Do you realize how creepy that is?" "Creepy?" I barked a laugh. "You're meeting some guy in the middle of the night, whispering into lockets, hiding letters, and I'm the creep?" She crossed her arms, her tone turning icy. "You're pathetic. He's just a friend. I was helping him with something private. Not everything is some big conspiracy." I slammed my hand on the table, the sound echoing in the room. "Private enough to rent a hotel room?" That got me a smirk. "You really think I'm going to explain myself when you've already made up your mind?" She said, her voice dripping with condescension. "If you want to believe your little detective fantasy, go ahead. Just don't expect me to play along." Then she brushed past me, leaving the locket and the letter exactly where they were, like she didn't care if I knew the truth, because she'd already decided I wasn't strong enough to do anything about it. After that night, we didn't have another screaming match. We didn't even talk much at all. It was worse than fighting, it was silence, thick and suffocating, like we were two strangers squatting in the same house. She stopped making any effort to hide her absences. Sometimes she'd leave at odd hours without saying where she was going. Other times, she'd come home late, hair slightly mussed, smelling faintly of smoke and a cologne that made my teeth grind. If I asked anything, she'd give a curt, "Don't start," and that would be the end of it. Meals were eaten in separate rooms. I'd hear her laughing softly on the phone when she thought I was asleep. Once, I walked past the study and caught her shutting the drawer where she kept the locket. She didn't even flinch, just locked eyes with me, lips curling into the smallest, most infuriating smile. It wasn't just her betrayal anymore, it was the way she seemed to enjoy watching me squirm, as if my pain was some kind of private entertainment for her. I started to realize something terrifying: she didn't care if I found out. She didn't care if it broke us. And the more I thought about it, the more I knew, I needed to find out exactly who that man was. Because until I had a name, I couldn't end this. I couldn't end her. I got my chance on a rainy Saturday afternoon. Mara had gone out shopping, but left her laptop open on the couch. Normally, she guarded it like a hawk, so I knew this was either a mistake, or she thought I was too broken to try anything. Her email was open, and one draft caught my eye. It had no subject line, just a single name in the "to" field, Lucas K. My heart was pounding as I clicked. Inside was only a sentence: "I hate how careful we have to be, but it's worth it." The tone made my skin crawl. It wasn't just an affair, it was romantic, intimate, like she was invested. A quick search of his name in her inbox brought up dozens of deleted threads stored in her archive. Hotel receipts. Plans to meet. Inside jokes I didn't understand. And one message that made my stomach flip: "We will finish what we started." He doesn't suspect a thing. They'd been saying that for months. I didn't even hear her come in until she was standing in the doorway, dripping wet from the rain, her eyes locked on me sitting with her laptop. "You went through my emails," she said, her voice low and sharp. I didn't look away. "I know who he is now, Mara." For the first time, her face actually shifted, something between shock and fury. And that's when I realized, knowing his name had just made this a much more dangerous game. Mara stepped into the room slowly, setting her shopping bag down like she was placing a weapon on the table before a duel. Her hair was damp, strands sticking to her face, but her eyes were razor-sharp. "So what's your plan now, Elliot?" she asked, voice dripping with mockery. "You gonna run to Lucas and tell him his dirty little secret is out? Or maybe post about it online like some bitter, desperate husband?" I didn't answer. I just kept my gaze on her, waiting for the guilt that never came. Instead, she smirked. "You think you've got it all figured out, but you don't know a damn thing. Lucas isn't just some fling. She stopped herself, biting down on her lip. For a second, I thought I saw something vulnerable. But it vanished as quickly as it came. I pushed. "Then tell me. Who is he? What are you planning? What's this thing you're going to finish?" Her laugh was soft and cruel. "God, you sound ridiculous. Like a bad actor in a soap opera. What are you planning, Mara?" She mimicked my voice, then shook her head. "You're not entitled to every detail of my life just because we signed some papers 5 years ago." That's when I realized, this wasn't going to end with a tearful confession. She didn't care about saving face anymore. And worse, she wanted me to feel powerless. But I wasn't going to let her win that easily. After that exchange, I knew talking to Mara was pointless. Every word out of her mouth was either a lie or a weapon meant to make me doubt myself. So I decided to go around her. I started with Lucas. I ran his name through social media, business directories, anything I could get my hands on. Turned out he owned a small renovation company across town, specializing in exclusive, private projects. The kind of business where you could make a lot of money under the table if you were smart, or dirty. His profile picture was the same smug face I'd seen in the locket. Scrolling through, I saw Mara in the background of a few group photos, always near him, always with that light in her eyes she used to have for me. One night, while she was out with friends, I drove by his office. The lights were off, but his truck was there. Parked next to it was Mara's car. I sat in my own car across the street, my hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel, watching shadows move in the second-floor windows. I stayed until nearly midnight. When they finally came out, they weren't holding hands or touching, just walking side by side, close enough that it felt practiced. Like they'd done this 100 times before. She didn't see me. But as I watched them drive off in separate directions, I knew, this wasn't just a fling. Whatever it was calculated. And if I didn't figure it out soon, I had a feeling I was going to end up blindsided in a way I couldn't recover from. The next week, Mara came home late 3 nights in a row. No excuses, no explanations, just a shrug when I asked, like I was some nosy neighbor instead of her husband. By Thursday, I'd had enough. I told her I knew about Lucas, about the hotel, about the late-night emails. I expected her to explode, to deny, to spin some ridiculous story. Instead, she laughed. Actually laughed. "Elliot, you think you've uncovered some grand betrayal. Newsflash, you were just convenient. Lucas is the real thing. Always has been." Her words hit harder than I expected. I felt my knees weaken, but I stayed standing, gripping the edge of the counter until my knuckles hurt. "You could have just left," I said quietly. She smirked. "And give you the satisfaction of thinking you were worth leaving for?" "No. I like watching you twist." That's when something in me snapped. All the sleepless nights, the paranoia, the way she made me feel small, it condensed into one sharp moment of clarity. This wasn't about saving the marriage. It wasn't even about Lucas. This was about taking back my power before she stripped away the last piece of me I still recognized. I didn't tell her my plan. I just walked out of the kitchen, leaving her to her smug little victory. Because I knew, by the time I was done, she wouldn't be the one holding the knife anymore. The very next morning, I started putting my plan in motion. First thing I did was quietly pull copies of every bank statement, credit card bill, and joint account record we had. Buried in the charges were patterns, withdrawals in cash, hotel bills under different names, and transfers to an account I'd never seen before. I also reached out to a buddy from college who worked in private investigations. I didn't tell him every detail, just enough to get him interested. Within days, he sent me a file. Lucas's business was deep in debt, with lawsuits pending over shady contracts. And guess whose name popped up on some of the payment records? Mara's. It wasn't just an affair, it was a partnership. Whatever they were planning to finish, it involved money, and a lot of it. While she was out that night, I moved half of our liquid savings into an account in my name only. I also set up a meeting with a divorce lawyer for the following week, making sure to choose one with a reputation for going for the jugular. When Mara came home, she didn't notice anything was different. She poured herself a glass of wine, gave me a passing glance, and went upstairs. But I noticed something different, in me. The fear was gone. The uncertainty, too. Now, every time I looked at her, I wasn't wondering if she'd betray me again. I was counting down the days until I could watch her realize she'd lost. The following week felt like the longest of my life, but every hour was a step closer to freedom. I met with the lawyer, laid out the proof, the emails, the hotel receipts, the bank transfers, and watched his eyebrows rise higher with each piece of evidence. He told me flat out, "You're in a stronger position than you think." I kept up the act at home. Polite, distant, even a little bit meek. I wanted her to think I was still the broken, powerless husband she'd been toying with. Meanwhile, I'd already moved the money, secured my personal assets, and prepared to file for divorce with full leverage. The day I told her, she was in the kitchen, sipping coffee like it was any other morning. "I'm done, Mara," I said, sliding the divorce papers across the table. "And I know everything, about Lucas, the money, all of it." For the first time in months, she didn't have a snappy comeback. Her mouth opened, then closed. That smug, untouchable look drained from her face. You can't just." "I can," I cut in. "And I already have." I left her sitting there, staring at the papers, while I walked out the door with my head high for the first time in a long time. Looking back now, I realize she thrived on control, on keeping me in the dark. But once I saw the truth, the game was over, not for me, but for her. If anyone reading this ever feels that gnawing suspicion in your gut, listen to it. Dig. Find the truth. Because the most dangerous thing you can give someone like Mara, is the chance to think you'll never fight back.